Greetings my wonderful audience who continue to watch my videos. Welcome to yet another retro gaming and fun facts fueled episode of the 8-Bit Academic. In today's episode we will be going all the way back to the early 90s and take a look at the granddaddy of 3D fighting games, the Virtua Fighter series, which had its first start in the year 1993. See, up until this point, even throughout much of the last decade of the 20th century, majority of fighting games were mostly made up of 2D pixelated graphics. The pixels themselves being present in these early games in order to work on older CRT or cathode ray tube screens, hence why most recent remakes of older games that still use pixels tend to not look so great on modern screens unless they're using a CRT filter. It wasn't until Sega, who were a pretty big deal back in the day, decided to take a risk and invest quite a lot of time and money into this new emerging technology called 3D animation, which had already been in development since about the mid-1970s, albeit very rudimentary and primitive back then, and thus the very first 3D fighting game called Virtua Fighter was born, which itself would end up becoming a long-running franchise that would compete for dominance in the global gaming market against the likes of Tekken, Dead or Alive and Soul Calibur, which were other early 3D fighting games from the early to mid-90s that tapped into the promise of 3D animation, all while companies like Capcom, Midway and SNK would stick to what they knew best in the 2D fighting game genre, only adopting 3D when it was a little more developed in the late 90s. Now, for the purpose of this video, I mainly recorded footage of me playing Virtua Fighter Remix, which was an updated version released later on for PC, which allows you to switch between the classic 1993 graphics and more enhanced mid to late 90s graphics while playing the game. All other footage of sequels I sourced on YouTube, with links to those channels in my description, since I don't have any Sega emulators on my PC at the moment. Oh, and playing fighting games on PC with a keyboard instead of a controller is quite a stressful activity. Trust me.
Oh!
I wanted it so fucking bad. I just can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man. All I wanted to do was, I was fucking lonely. I wanted to just fucking stream and have a good time. Have a good game.
The character I have chosen to play as is a kung fu master named Lau Chan, who you may notice bears a very strong resemblance to Tao Pai Pai, aka Mercenary Tao, from the Dragon Ball anime and manga. And there's a specific reason why I point this out, because once again, both of these characters are actually based on a real person, who you may recognize if, like me, you are a massive fan of old school kung fu movies.
What are you doing here? I'm leader of the guard, Lau Chan Lee. You're no better than a dog, following us about.
But before we get into all of that, let's first take a look at both of these characters first, and the fictional universes they inhabit. Lau Chan initially appeared in the very first Virtua Fighter game released back in 1993, and has been a mainstay since then, appearing in every installment of the entire franchise. His most recent appearance being in Virtua Fighter 5R, which is one of the many re-released updated versions of Virtua Fighter 5, which itself was published way back in 2008. Release a new game already, Sega! In the game's lore, Lau Chan is the father of Pai Chan and hails from Shandong province in mainland China, with his fighting style being called the Tiger Swallow Fist, or Wohuan, Huyan Chuan, and Kohen Ken in Mandarin and Japanese. Now, in more recent entries to the Virtua Fighter series, Lau Chan appears to have aged quite a lot, sporting grey hair and a greyed out beard. But in the earlier entries, at least from Virtua Fighter 1 up to 3, he seems to have a very close resemblance to Tao Pai Pai, a character that appears as one of Son Goku's many enemies in the Dragon Ball franchise, which surprises me that Akira Toriyama didn't seek legal action against Sega as a result of this. I mean, they basically look almost exactly the same, with the only real difference being their outfits.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. Intel has told us there are at least 7.
Okay, I already see one. Give him. Okay.
They're the same picture.
Mercenary Tao first appeared in the Dragon Ball manga in chapter 85, which was released all the way back in 1986 in Japan, and in the anime adaptation he appears in episode 59 in the Commander Red saga as a mercenary and assassin hired by the Red Ribbon Army to kill Goku, who himself is on a quest to find all 7 mystical Dragon Balls. Unfortunately for Tao, he gets absolutely demolished by Goku and blows himself up with his own grenade, and basically disappears from the rest of the original anime and manga, only reappearing in Dragon Ball Z as a cyborg, first in the 23rd Martial Arts Tournament where he gets an ass whooping from Tien, and later in a filler episode during the Cell Saga where he works for a local gangster named Vodka, who hires him to find all 7 Dragon Balls, but is ultimately left utterly disgraced when he encounters a now grown-up Goku, who has also unlocked his Super Saiyan transformation by this point, after he tries to trick Goku into obtaining his Dragon Balls, but even fails at doing this. Not much is seen of Mercenary Tao after this again, and it was later confirmed by Akira Toryiama that at some point Tao and his older brother Master Shen, who also appeared as a rival to Master Roshi in the original anime and manga, seemingly got mixed up in something and died as a result of the event, with only minimal appearances aside from this in other Dragon Ball related media. Now it's very clear that throughout the Dragon Ball franchise, one can easily tell how much Akira Toriyama himself took quite a lot of inspiration from various sources, the most notable being the legend of the Monkey King or Sun Wukong, which comes from a 16th century Ming Dynasty Chinese novel called Journey to the West, and who in Japanese translations of said novel is referred to as Son Goku. So despite being a very long-running Japanese anime show and manga series, there seems to be quite a lot of Chinese cultural elements included in the story, even down to everyone's fashion sense and outfit designs, with Goku sporting an orange-colored gi, which takes a lot of inspiration itself from Shaolin warrior monk robes and complete with Chinese-styled Hanfu boots, since Akira Toriyama purposefully designed this iconic outfit to give Dragon Ball a more Chinese martial arts-centric feel, making it very distinct from traditional Japanese karate uniforms. Akira Toriyama himself stated that the overall appearance of many of the outfits in Dragon Ball were heavily influenced by the attire worn in Chinese kung fu films, since he was apparently a massive fan of Hong Kong martial arts movies, and particularly those of Jackie Chan, seeking to emulate both the style and the action comedy balance of films like Drunken Master and Snake and the Eagle's Shadow. And here is where we get to that super mind-blowing part of today's episode, because it is here where I will reveal to you all just how much of an influence kung fu movies from the 1970s had on both Akira Toriyama and the dev team at Sega when they were making the very first Virtua Fighter game. When Jackie Chan finally got his breakthrough in the Hong Kong film industry with his 2 most famous classics, the aforementioned Drunken Master and Snake and the Eagle's Shadow, which were both released in 1978, audiences around the world would be introduced to a very brutal on-screen villain who among kung fu movie fans would become known as either Thunderleg or Silver Fox, due to the iconic antagonists he played in many popular martial arts films at the time. However, it was his appearance in Snake in the Eagle's Shadow as Sheng Quan that would have the greatest impact on global pop culture as a whole, and which would serve as the primary inspiration for these two iconic characters in anime and video games, namely Tao Pai Pai from Dragon Ball and Lau Chan from Virtua Fighter.
No way! Yes way!
This iconic villain from 1970s kung fu movies that would influence both manga creators and game devs alike would be played by Korean Taekwondo and Tang Soo Do master Hwang Jang Lee, who started his movie career when he moved to Hong Kong in 1974. Hwang Jang Lee was born as Hwang Jang Lee, with Jang Lee being a Chinese pronunciation of his name, in the year 1944 in Aomori, Japan, just 8 months before the end of World War II and Japanese occupation in Korea, his home country. His father and mother had moved to Japan sometime before the war, where his father was able to start up a successful shipping company, since by this point Korea was considered a territory of the colonial Japanese Empire, and despite Koreans often facing much discrimination by native Japanese people, they were allowed to move about quite freely and even live in the many territories that Japan considered as part of its empire. As a result, many Koreans, including the Hwang family, would immigrate to Japan, seeking out new opportunities and possible business ventures, with many even staying behind after the end of the war and becoming known as Dainichi Koreans, or those who stayed behind, instead of returning to their home country. This, however, was not the case for Jeong Ri's family, though since in 1945, when he was about a year or two old, the family would return to a newly liberated Korea, but which was sadly still quite unstable thanks to Soviet Russian and American ambitions, who controlled either side of the demilitarized zone, which lay as a horizontal line across the center of the nation, dividing it between the communist-controlled north and the barely democratic south. As a result of this, Jeong Ri and his family would also live through the Korean War from 1950 to 1953, but luckily for him, when the war was over, he and his family ended up on the southern side, and thus were able to live a fairly comfortable life, enjoying the benefits of both democracy and capitalism.
I love democracy. I love the Republic.
As a teenager, against his parents' will, Hwang started training in martial arts, more specifically in Tang Soo Do and Taekwondo, which are both known for their insane kicking techniques. If you're familiar with either Juri from Street Fighter, Kim from King of Fighters, or Hwarang from Tekken, then you'll know exactly what these martial arts are. Though it seems like Hwang Jang Lee or Jeong Ri may have trained in the South Korean version of Taekwondo, otherwise known as WTF or What the Fuck Taekwondo. World Federation Taekwondo, which places an emphasis on kicking only, especially during sparring and tournaments, mostly due to that snore fest we call the Olympics, which seems to be great at ruining martial arts.
Russian Olympic Committee, Vladislav Larin, the number 1 seed, North Macedonia. Well, no matter what, he's made history here. North Macedonia have never had a silver or a gold in any sport. One of that, which will be at least a silver. His eyes, of course, will be fixed on the gold as they're fixed.
In the world could do, it's like sucks! Damn!
The North Korean style, or ITF Taekwondo, as in International Taekwondo Federation style, which in my opinion is more effective since it actually incorporates boxing, is the less popular one. But this is simply down to some really dumb political BS, since one of the founding fathers of the martial art, named General Choi Hong-hee, is apparently considered a traitor by South Koreans, since he defected to the North in 1979. Which, why though? Man willingly chose to live under a brutal communist dictatorship. Why? But I will most likely do a more dedicated video on the history of Taekwondo in the future, because I just found out that this martial art exists purely because of Korean political propaganda. But anyway, to get back on track, in 1965 at the age of 21, Hwang was drafted into the army as per tradition in South Korea.
No. Wait.
By this point, he became quite proficient in Taekwondo, and his martial arts skills were recognized during his basic training by his senior officer. And as a result of this, he was enlisted as a Taekwondo instructor for the South Korean army, where he had the privilege of training over 1,000 soldiers in the fighting arts. Now, by this point, the Vietnam War had kicked off in full swing between the communist-controlled North and kinda democratic South, in a very similar situation like that of the Korean War, with the North Vietnamese being backed by their hammer and sickle Marxist bros, China, Soviet Russia, and North Korea, and the South Vietnamese being backed by pretty much anyone who wasn't a conniving commie, but instead a corrupt capitalist, which was mostly the United States, that even back then just couldn't seem to stay out of other people's business.
It's free real estate.
So, since the South Koreans really disliked communism due to their experiences in the Korean War, they naturally decided to join in the needlessly murdering each other over political differences game and committed about 320,000 military personnel to the war effort on the side of the South Vietnamese government against the North. Now, as a result of this military assistance by South Korea from 1964 to 1973, it turns out that Hwang Jang Lee would end up training South Vietnamese troops as well as American troops in Taekwondo during the Vietnam War. And there's also a bit of an urban legend surrounding his time there, where he was allegedly challenged to a fight whilst teaching Taekwondo to the locals by a South Vietnamese soldier who decided he wasn't going to play fair and ended up pulling out a knife on the young Korean master. Some versions of the story say that the fight only lasted about 30 seconds, with a kick landing to the side of his opponent's head, which knocked him unconscious. Others claim that this Vietnamese soldier lunged at Hwang with his knife, but old Thunderleg intercepted him with a powerful but lethal roundhouse kick to the temple, killing his attacker instantly. Supposedly Hwang was never charged, as all the witnesses deemed that he acted in self-defense. After his military service ended, he would return to his homeland and in 1974 star in a low-budget film titled The Korean Connection, among a few other movies, where he got to show off his superb Taekwondo skills on the big screen for the very first time. At some point, this Korean B-movie was most likely seen by Hong Kong movie producer Ing Si-yoon, who was a former executive at Shaw Brothers Studio, who after starting up his own company called Seasonal Film Corporation, decided to call up the Korean kicker in 1975 to star in a film called Secret Rivals, where Hwang Jang Lee would play the role of a villain named Silver Fox, which is yet another nickname that kung fu movie fanatics would come to know him by. Following this first film, he would go on to reprise the role of Silver Fox's twin brother in the 1977 sequel, Secret Rivals 2, and in that same year would appear in two more films titled Snuff Bottle Connection and The Invincible Armor, where he once again played the villain, though his role as Minister Cheng in Invincible Armor seems to have taken quite a lot of inspiration from the character of Pai Mei, which I already made a video about, link in the pinned comment down below. Despite the massive success of these movies, it unfortunately seemed like Hwang Jang Lee would end up constantly being typecast as a villain in most of his films, but it doesn't seem like he minded it at all, as he would go on to star in two of Jackie Chan's early films, which I had mentioned earlier in 1978, in what could arguably be considered his most famous roles as Thunderleg in Drunken Master and the evil Eagle Claw Master Shen Quan in Snake in the Eagle's Shadow. and it would be this latter villainous role, as stated before, that would serve as the inspiration for both Tao Pai Pai in Dragon Ball and Lau Chan in Virtua Fighter. Another fun fact, but probably not so fun for Jackie Chan at the time, is that during filming, he accidentally kicked out one of Jackie Chan's teeth while performing a fight scene, and apparently also knocked him unconscious with a double flying kick to the throat. I would also add that his role in 1979's Dragon Claws as Ling Go-fung probably also served as inspiration for these iconic fictional characters, since this villain seems to resemble the same one he played in Snake in the Eagle's Shadow, albeit doing a different kung fu style.
Ling Go-fung, come out! Bastard, show yourself! Ah! Bastard, am I? You're very clever. You know your name.
Hwang Jang Lee, as mentioned just now, would go on to play many iconic villainous roles throughout his career in the Hong Kong film industry, often being typecast most likely because he wasn't Chinese. Just like how in Hollywood, the non-white characters were often cast as the villains, it seems even in Asia, a foreigner is often given the role of the bad guy. And since Jang Lee or Jeong Ri was Korean, he was naturally always given the role of the antagonist to the Chinese hero of the story. It would only be in his first directorial debut in 1981 called Hitman in the Hand of Buddha where he would cast himself as the main hero of the story, though he did have at least 2 other roles in the late 70s as a good guy sidekick in movies like Bloodchild and another one I can barely find any information on called Tiger Claws, not to be confused with the American martial arts B-movie starring Bolo Yeung of the same name. In the 1980s, however, Hwang Jang Lee's Hong Kong movie career started to dwindle. He would play another good guy role in 1986 in a movie called The Innocent Interloper, and as a somewhat not so evil antagonist in Sammo Hung's Millionaire's Express, where he plays a Japanese ninja trying to steal Chinese artifacts. There are so many movies one could mention of this legendary kicking king of Hong Kong cinema, since he acted in over 75 films in his 22-year career, and even producing a handful of documentaries, such as 1982's The Art of High Impact Kicking, where he demonstrates how to perform the most efficient and effective kicks in Taekwondo. But I think I'll leave that up to you, the viewer, to check out for yourselves if you are interested in learning more about this real-life version of Tao Pai Pai and Lau Chan. He would return to his home country of South Korea in the late 1980s and star in a handful of roles in Korean cinema as well. But with having already spent 2 decades in the film industry and cementing his name in movie history as the greatest kung fu villain of all time, I think it's safe to say that Hwang Jang Lee, aka Thunderleg or Silver Fox, most likely got tired of the silver screen life and decided to retire after his final role in a Korean movie called Boss in 1996, deciding to focus more on promoting Taekwondo with seminars around the world and even starting up a handful of pretty random businesses along the way, such as running a hotel, a bodyguard service, and even a company that manufactured golf tees. In 2003, Hwang was awarded his 9th degree black belt in Taekwondo, earning the title of Grandmaster within this national Korean sport, and has gone on record saying that he doesn't really like the way Taekwondo is done at the Olympics, believing that it focuses too much on the sport aspect rather than the martial art aspect, which he feels hampers a person's fighting ability. He would return briefly for a role in a 2009 historical action K-drama called The Return of Il Jimai, but since then seems to have fully retired from acting completely, and now at the age of 82 is simply living out the rest of his days with his family, but still as fit and flexible as ever, continuing to practice his beloved martial art of Taekwondo. And with that, folks, we come to the end of yet another 8-Bit Academic episode, which I sincerely hope you all enjoyed, and as always perhaps have learned something interesting along the way. If you wish to support my channel, you can do so by maybe checking out my Patreon. Unfortunately, I don't have much going on there at the moment due to simply not having the time, because I do have a day job as an animator and storyboard artist. But I am going to be releasing new episodes there as well. So if you do choose to become a patron, you will get access to new episodes about 4 or 5 days earlier, since I'm thinking of releasing them maybe on a Sunday or Monday on Patreon for anyone who decides to sign up for just $1 a month, which last time I checked is about 16 Rand in my local South African currency. If not, you can always just like this video, leave a comment or subscribe if you haven't already, and sharing it with anyone who you think may be interested will also be a great help as well. Anyway, that's it from me for today, and I'll catch you all up next week, same time and same place. Peace.